Hi, Jayant. Always good seeing you in Singapore. Would you mind telling our audiences a bit more about yourself to start with?
Hello, Luke. I am an analyst. I analyze junior mining companies and I invest in junior mining companies. I advise my clients on investing in junior mining companies. But I have also a big passion apart from an analysis, and that is to understand the macroeconomics and cultural aspects of different places in the world. I travel a lot. Okay. I live in different places, and I try to understand what is happening in the world. That's what I'm passionate about.
So, given that you were just in India recently, and in light of the gold monetization scheme over there, what kind of receptivity are you seeing with Indians accepting paper gold as a substitute for physical gold?
Well, Indians don't like paper gold. They prefer the physical material. But the gold monetization scheme has turned out to be a big joke. Indian government has managed to accumulate about 3 tons of gold in the last 2 years of all this propaganda and promotion. Now, let's put this 3 ton into perspective. India imports about 3 tons of gold every single day. So this is nothing. This is a drop in the ocean, what Indian government has accumulated so far.
In your opinion, what is the probability for success of this gold monetization scheme going forward?
This will not work. The reason why Indians buy so much gold is because they cannot trust their government. So why should they give their gold to the government in the first place? Now remember, most of the gold that Indian government has collected so far has come from temples, not from individuals. In fact, within the first few months, all that they managed to collect was a couple of kilograms of gold, which means that not a single minister or bureaucrat from the country decided to participate in the scheme. They don't believe in their own talk. Every middle-class family in India owns at least a few kilograms of gold.
What do you think has to change with this scheme in order for it to be successful?
Nothing that they can change will make it palatable to the people in the country, mostly because they make it so complex, and their intention is always to steal your money, and people know it very well. So remember, a lot of gold is bought by poor people who do not trust the government at all. They will not give their gold to the government, even if government gives them good incentives.
We both know that the rupee has lost 99.8% of its value compared to gold since the 1960s. And that wealth preservation in the form of gold is somewhat ingrained in the minds of the older generation of Indians. Has there been a change of mindset in the newer generation of Indians?
Absolutely. The new generation has lost a lot of its interest in buying gold. But remember, the new generation has faced economic growth in the country. India historically grew at a Hindu rate of growth which was 1 or 2%. In the last 3 decades or so, India grew at a much faster rate. When you grow at such a high pace, and when consumerism picks up, people tend to buy more stuff with their surplus, economic surplus, and they also, when they invest, they want to gain higher yields by investing in properties and a stock market, because all these things were booming. So yes, in the last 3 decades, there has been a slight decay in interest in gold. But remember, Indian economy is stagnating again. Don't believe what the World Bank, CNBC, and IMF is telling you. I am telling you, Indian economy is starting to stagnate again. And the result is that property prices are falling, stock market is falling. The net benefit from investing in the stock market has been negative over the last 2 or 3 years now. The result is that Indians are now buying increased amount of gold over the last 1 year or so, and you can see that in the market already.
I mean, like what you were touching on, how the culture has maybe shifted to a bit more of a consumeristic culture, and where spending has increased and maybe savings has gone down. Do you feel that this trend will be reversing anytime soon?
No, because the Keynesian economics and fiat money system and the whole propaganda by today's international institution has been such that they encourage people to consume their wealth rather than to save it. Now, my grandmom had better morals. She taught us to save rather than consume. So yes, consumption will continue to grow, but at the same time, because there is economic growth, those people who save will save, and they will save their money where they get the least destruction of their savings. If a stock market, property, and investing in infrastructure or manufacturing does not provide them a positive yield, they will go for gold. And I see that interest already changing.
What is your opinion about the Indian government's policies in regard to importing and exporting investment-grade bullion?
Well, they keep changing this on a daily basis. I follow gold professionally, but I can't keep pace with what Indian government is doing with its monetization scheme and with their import and exports and all these bullion and doré different taxes they have, import taxes they have on the doré and gold. It's so confusing that I can't keep pace with that. I don't know how the guy on the street who they are encouraging to participate in it can keep pace with it. It's almost impossible.
What do you think the optimal approach should be with regard to, let's say, importing and exporting laws?
Well, depends on what you mean by optimum. It is optimum already because Indian government is more interested in collecting bribes. And the higher restrictions you can get away with, the more bribes they can collect. And smugglers make a lot of money this way. And because all these people who want to benefit from restrictions are benefiting right now, this is optimum for them. Now, at the same time, they cannot continue to increase the rate because then the traders and consumers will start shouting. So this is an optimum strategy for them. But Luke, it's important to understand one very interesting thing about the Indian gold market. You can buy gold in India right now at about 7% priced higher than the international price. If this gold had paid full import taxes, it should cost you about 12 or 13% higher than the international price, which means that most of the gold being sold by the traders is smuggled gold. The only gold that gets imported today, in my view, is gold that traders must buy to keep their papers clean. So those people who must benefit from it, the smugglers, bureaucrats, and politicians, they are making a huge amount of money, and they are not going to change this rule.
That's a very interesting point, Jayant. Maybe let's touch a bit about mining now. Being an expert on mining, what are some supply and demand factors telling you about the market in 2016?
For the gold industry?
Yes.
Well, mining does not really affect the market for gold, in my view, because the amount of gold that is available in the market is about 100 times more than what is produced every year. Or even there's a higher proportion of gold available in the market. And a lot of that gold is actually available to come back to the market at the right price. So what mining by itself does not make a huge difference in the ocean of available gold in the society.
Maybe let's pull the conversation back towards the Indian government and some of the geopolitical developments happening in India. So over the past year, what do you think is the most important geopolitical development in India?
Well, unfortunately, I have been pessimistic about India, and I have become increasingly pessimistic about India as time goes by. Indians educated Indians are becoming increasingly fanatic. Hindus were mostly tolerant people. They're losing their tolerance. The result is that their government is becoming more fanatic as well. Nationalism is increasing very rapidly, and this is not nationalism underpinned by any values. This is underpinned by tribalism and arrogance. And this is going to lead to a bad future for the society of India.
Are you really starting to see a sense of, let's say, distrust or fear and anger when you go back to India?
It has always been the case, and this will become much worse because India has always been a very irrational and superstitious society. The result has been that these people have been historically very distrusting of each other. There is always this hidden stress among these people, and that is the case with poor people, and that is why they are poor. Now, with the import of modern technology hasn't really worked very well with these people because modern technology sits on the minds of very irrational people. This has led to increased stress in the society, huge increase in consumption of drugs, bad food, which is resulting into massive healthcare issues in the country. So in a way, there is an increased problem in the society going forward.
So in the midst of all these chaos, I mean, the amount of gold that is consumed in India is still, I would say, rocket high compared to some of the other countries. So where is this awareness coming from?
This is not a result of awareness, Luke. This is a result of the simple fact that when economies stagnate, when you see a very uncertain future, you buy gold. And that is exactly the reason why South Asians and Middle Eastern people have historically bought gold, because they are afraid of their government. They cannot trust each other, so it's better to keep something hidden underground in your house. And it does not make sense historically in these countries to invest your money because investing does not provide you a return in these societies. But that brings me to a very important conclusion about the world. The whole world is stagnating economically right now, except for some of the city-states and perhaps China. I continue to be optimistic about China. But remember, for the first time in the history of humanity, I think, the whole planet is starting to stagnate. When economies stagnate, why should you be investing in manufacturing or infrastructure? You buy things that you can keep with yourself, and one of them is gold.
I think that's a fantastic note to end this interview on. So thanks so much for your time, Jayant. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thanks very much for having me, Luke.